Any drinks in today?
Okie dokie. So we are finally. When I say finally, I must be some kind of a relief for some people to come to the end of 2020. It might not be, but some people it might be. Anyhow, we're coming towards the end of 2020, and throughout 2020, we've seen a lot of things happen which a lot of people weren't even prepared for. I think it would be fair to say most of us weren't prepared for. So we started off with some activism, some movements, the BLM movement, which was gaining a lot of traction, and the coronavirus. This time last year, the coronavirus was pretty much unheard of. There was slight kind of things happening in the background. But this time last year, everybody was living a very normal life, if you can remember what that was like. And then whatever else happened with the coronavirus, the lockdowns, the vaccination controversy, the coronavirus itself being a controversy for some people. Anyway, more on those particular subjects with special guests this week, so you don't want to be missing out on this one. We're going to be joining a lot of superstars from within the local community and people who have been activists and people who have been working in frontline and very active on social media as well as mainstream media. So stick around and keep an eye out for these guys. This is going to be a good one. Straight after this. Okay, good evening and welcome back to episode 10 of season 2, and it's the final episode of Beardos Media of 2020. So welcome for all our guests as well as the people who are viewing from wherever you're viewing. I won't like to imagine where people are making connections of their internet from and where they're viewing from. There are a lot of stories about where people are connecting from and where they catch up on their social media activities. But we're here now, and thank you for joining us today. We've got some guests who are going to join us because we're going to round up 2020. We're going to round up 2020 and the significant things and the main things that have been happening in 2020. And to kickstart that, I'm going to invite in somebody who's been in national media, mainstream media. This guy has won multiple awards for the stuff that he does within the community, alongside another great friend and somebody who works within the community. We've got True Powell and we have Justice Williams. Good evening, folks.
Good evening.
Justice, just to clarify, is it OBE or MBE?
MBE.
I tell you, I keep forgetting, I just checked about 5 minutes ago and I forgot already. Welcome to the show, Justice.
Hi, we're reunited again, True.
Me and Justice hosted the Black Economy Awards last week or the week before, I think.
Congratulations.
So it's nice to see you again, Justice.
Excellent. Hi. You guys have been right in the forefront of things that have been happening in 2020, especially with some of the things that are related to our own particular little communities, as well as tackling issues on the ground. And I know, True, you've made lots of performances within main events. I mean, I see you at the BYSA events quite regularly, doing performances there with your team, who are phenomenal at what they do, and the messages that you bring across. Justice, again, yourself, I've seen you do a lot of work also within the community. You're always getting in touch with entrepreneurs as well and sharing your wisdom and giving them opportunities to build on what they're doing, giving them opportunities to become guest lecturers. And through these difficult times, things must have been tough. How would you round up 2020, Justice?
2020 has been I think a year of many great lessons. I think it's been an awakening of sorts for many people. So I think for me personally, it's allowed me to kind of focus on what's important and
Yeah.
going forward into 2021, not really worrying or caring about the things that sometimes we have been caught up in. Because as we know, like this year, Black Lives Matter, which something that has been around for a long time, and we've always been saying Black Lives Matter, has kind of come to the forefront and kind of made people kind of really see things from a totally different perspective.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's been an interesting year, and I'm just hoping that moving forward into 2021, it's not just going to be something that's forgotten about, that was a fad, a trend, a phase, but actually something that we can kind of move forward in terms of getting a more level playing field and more equality of opportunity for all people.
Yeah, I mean, true. You've also been very heavily involved in the Black Lives Matter campaign, and I've noticed you've been on GMTV and is it BBC as well, and you've been on loads of news channels, and I know they've been waking you up really early in the morning for these things as well, haven't they? Which you've always talked about. How would you round up what's been going on with the Black Lives movement, the movement itself, and how people have evolved since then? I mean, do you think it's had the impact that it should have done or what it deserves?
Just to caveat kind of what Justice was saying, for me, it's been a real roller coaster year. So there has been many lows, but equally I have had some highs. Um, and I say that in yes, we know the Black Lives Matter movement is here. We all seen the tragic, unforgivable death of George Floyd back in May,
Yeah.
and it did allow society to wake up about what's going on with some of these injustices. And we know the Black Lives Matter is all about giving Black people equal life and liberty. We know there's disadvantages in healthcare, in poverty, socially, economically, culturally. We know that there's so many obstacles that Black people have to face, and that's what the Black Lives Matter movement is all about: creating an equal level playing field. And actually, what I have seen since the death of George Floyd, I have seen people be a lot more conscious about being anti-racist, and I think that that's extremely important when tackling racism, particularly within the UK, because the UK, as we know, racism is very covert in the UK. It's not as diverse as it is in America. It is really covert, and it's about deconstructing some of those structures that are built up to keep Black people oppressed, and to maintain white supremacy. And for me, I have seen strides. So I have seen, more Black and brown faces on TV, and I've seen a lot of firsts. We had the first Black panel on loose women. We had so many different things, and I've seen a lot more people, kind of a lot more people recruiting board members for, and having diversity at the forefront of their mind. And that's all great. And I
Excellent.
absolutely applaud everybody that's making steps and strides. The downside to that, and this is why it's a roller coaster, is that I believe some people are doing it for lip service. I believe some people are doing it for PR. They don't want to look bad in front of everyone, so they have to post up this black square. They have to put their fist and say Black Lives Matter. They have to, go on the knee, because they're in fear that they're going to look bad. And equally, because of the discussions and because of Black Lives are going to the forefront, we are unfortunately seeing, and very obviously, the like how racism our country really is. So, prime example, the diversity performance, and we all know that the diversity performance was there to
Yeah.
bring Black lives to the forefront, as
Sure.
well as many other issues. But what that did, it gave racists an opportunity to, make their, racist heads appear, and be quite direct and say, it's got no place on the TV, it's got no place on entertainment.
Yeah, I remember
And
that.
even when Lewis Hamilton, for example, kind of takes the knee and goes for Black lives, how dare you bring politics in sports? How dare you bring politics in sports? But then you have Marcus Rashford, who's doing not speaking nothing about Black lives, but really going for children
Sure.
and changing politicians' minds. And it's being applauded. You know, that's absolutely fine. You can speak about politics when you're not
Mm.
speaking about Black Lives Matter. So it really has highlighted. It really has highlighted actually our country is a very, very racist country. And
Absolutely.
we have to do what we can to deconstruct that.
I think most people only get to realize when they're being subjected to it. And
Yeah.
unless people are subjected to it, you don't really get to appreciate how people are out there. I mean, I see so many odd comments being made because we do a lot of different kinds of work, and some of you will have noticed some of the even the charitable work that we do with feeding the homeless and giving out food parcels, and we still get people making really bizarre comments, not realizing that although a lot of the times it's us British whites who are leading the organization, the people we're serving are actually non-Asians. None of them are Asians. You know what I mean? None of them are people of color, and and they still have the audacity to kind of say something. I mean, would it be fair to say that that's the kind of things that you've also observed? And how would you say is the best way of moving forwards into 2021, given what True has actually kindly and eloquently explained about what the scenario is at the moment?
Oh, I've definitely observed it. I mean, I've been active on Twitter, and so has True been very active on Twitter. And I'll tell you, it's like we have to kind of come off and take a breather before we kind of post. And then it's really bizarre because you think that it's 2020 and you feel like it's the Windrush and the first boat from the Caribbean came here. And it's like Black people just landed or people of colour have just landed. But the comments that you see, people, everything, Sainsbury's was a classic one. Sainsbury's celebrated Black History Month.
Yeah.
And, oh, you're racist. I will never shop at Sainsbury's ever again.
Yeah.
We'll go over to Tesco's, and then Tesco's is
have you seen the comments about buying halal turkey? And their kids having, so apparently if you buy halal turkey, the kids will end up being Muslimic and face towards the Kaaba and start shouting Allahu Akbar. Yeah, apparently. Yeah.
But that just serves to the ignorance that exists in society. And it's not just working class people who are ignorant. It's across all breadths of society. People are middle class, upper class, who are only used to seeing people who look like them and only feel comfortable being around people who look like them. In Birmingham, True and I have been very much a part of the business scene for many, many years. But I'd say for the past 5 years, you rarely see me at these networking events anymore. I was here then. I had invitations for everything, red carpet, the opening of every envelope in Birmingham I would be invited to. But then, it became where I looked around the room and I realised that the fact that I have an MBE, the fact that I'm ticking the diversity box is often the time why I have been invited to attend a lot of these events. And it's a very, very cliquey. And when now the Black Lives Matter movement happened, a lot of the white counterparts in the Birmingham business community were silent. The silence was deafening. And True and I have been ambassadors for various charities in Birmingham. And we had to kind of have a word with a few people and say, look, your behaviour, your silence is complicit. Complicit to being a part of the problem. And whether or not you don't know the words to say and you're just saying, hey, I don't know, but I'm listening and I'm trying to understand. And it was all exciting and people wanted us to get involved with so many things, but then it's all died away now because things have gone quiet, people's focus is on elsewhere, and it's kind of all died away. But it's been our lived experience for many years. And the problem being is that being a Black person, you get told that Black women, you're angry, you've got a chip on your shoulder, Black men are aggressive by nature. You just get on with it and smile and try and think about situations situations where you want to respond how everybody else would respond. That perception, the unconscious bias that people have with Black people, they're going to look at you in a certain way, and then they kind of target you and kind of look at you and kind of brush you with that brush. And sometimes you're in situations where you have to kind of be on your best behavior, because it's like you're representing the whole of the black community.
That's it. Yeah.
White people don't feel like that when they go to events. They don't think, well, I'm representing all white people.
Yeah.
But sometimes
I think any time when somebody who is a minority will have to, well, subconsciously and even consciously have that in their minds, thinking that if I'm a minority, I'm somehow representing all my people. And that reflects on the, you know, whatever they say, whatever they do reflects on the whole of the community. But it's not often the case with our counterparts, and not everybody's the same. We've got to say, not everybody's thinking is aligned, and not everybody thinks that way. Unfortunately, we do have some bad apples in every community, and we've got, I guess, both, all communities need to be educated, and it's the lack of education usually which ends up bringing out the vile stuff, and lack of life experience.
And that's the thing, and I'll go on record and say, actually, for me, your complicitness and your silence is just as worse as somebody throwing the
absolutely 100%.
And for me, and actually probably a little bit more dangerous, because on the one hand, you're benefiting from this privilege, you're bettering from this structure that has clearly been built to oppress your friend or your business colleague who is sitting right next to you. Your privilege affords you that you don't have to, change the way in which you walk, change the way in which you talk, change and alter and lose some of your cultural identity in order so you're not targeted, or you're not stereotyped, or you're not put in a box of this aggressive black male. You don't have to think about all that when you're going for a tender or when you're going for a business, and that's the difference. When somebody like me and Justice is going for a tender, we absolutely have to think about how are we going to come across? What clothes are we going to wear to make us look a little bit more aggressive? I made that conscious decision years ago, even before this Black Lives Matter was a thing. Years ago, I made a conscious decision that I was going to stick to very bright pastel colours, which is why you will see me in pink, blue, like yellow even, because those softer skin tones, those softer tones make you a little bit more susceptible to people who may have these subconscious bias about fearing you because you're black and you're seen as aggressive. I've made a conscious decision around losing some of the baritone in my voice because I wanted to come across as a little bit more softer, and it is because of those unconscious bias. And unfortunately for our white counterparts, they don't have to encounter that. So not only do we have to go for this tender, and the other person sitting on the other side of the table may be looking at us thinking, well, actually, you're losing anyway because your white counterpart is gonna be given the advantage. We also, on top of that, have to lose some of our cultural and our personal identity just to secure that piece of work. And this is why the Black Lives Matter movement is so important.
And everybody has a role to play. I mean, myself and Ali, when we were hosting these things, we actually hosted we did a topic, and it was called Allahu Akbar. It's actually the most downloaded version of our episode of ours. Most people, because they have this misconception of what those words actually mean, because it's been bastardized in the whole of the media, thinking that this is only a phrase which is used by extremists and terrorists of some kind, whereas all it means is God is great. And we wanted to kind of change that narrative, and we wanted to get the audience to understand that, whatever you hear on the media, do your own independent research, because what you hear all the time isn't always going to be true either. So we all have an individual responsibility, like True said. We all have a responsibility to say something, do something. Whatever we can do, we should do to educate the masses. So on that note, guys, between the two, I mean, with both of you guys being so heavily involved in this particular arena, what would your advice be for 2021 people going forward? Because we've had the BLM movement, which has been kind of overshadowed by everything which has been going on right now with the coronavirus and stuff, and I'm conscious that I've you guys have been already here on 20 minutes, and
sure.
time just flies by. But how would you advise the audience to move forward in 2021, and what to think about, be conscious of when it comes to the BLM?
I mean, for me, ladies first, just to kind of keep it short and sweet, I would say like it's everybody's issue, it's everybody's problem. I think education is very, very important, and it's also about addressing those unconscious biases that sometimes we don't realize that we have. You hear that young children in school getting picked on and called racial slurs, when the matter of the fact is, where did they learn these things? Who's exposing them to these sort of things? So it's very important that as parents and as a community, we have a responsibility to address those things, because racism does exist in many different communities. And what we have to do is we have to look at what part can we play as an individual. Not everybody is going to be built to be an activist and is going to be able to march. Some people can make a difference by being in the boardroom and going for top level executive management roles, creating more diversity, creating more seats around the table for people of colour, for black people, for black women, for black men, and for people of all different communities, so that they can have a voice and have a say. And, you know, in good governance, we talk about groupthink, and if we all look like each other, we're all going to kind of sound like each other. We're going to all have that kind of similar perspective. So diversity to me is kind of like enriches life in every aspect.
Absolutely.
And if you're not used to being around people of color, or, you know, get out there, mix. Okay, it's not quite so easy to do it now because we're kind of pretty much got meet people.
But we could do it like this, yes.
Yeah, but when you have the opportunity to just listen in on conversations, get a deeper understanding. There's so many books and resources that have been created that are out there, and we just have to go out and do that little bit of research ourselves, and just treat everybody how you expect to be treated yourself.
Shireen and Jimmy Shabir agree with you, and they're passing their compliments at the same time. True, what would your final words be tonight?
I absolutely agree with Justice, and I would be really direct and actually say that my message isn't for black and brown people. My message is for white people, because those are the people that hold the power, and those are the people that can deconstruct and construct. Unfortunately, as black and brown people, we have no power in society. We can't deconstruct this thing and build it back up. So my message to them would be to don't just sit happily on your privilege and watch another community be oppressed. Call it out. And in the same vein Justice was saying around, you know, in your own fields and areas, call it out. If you are sitting in a boardroom and you see nothing but white men sitting around you in a boardroom of 12, call it out. If you're going through schooling and you're seeing, you know, a lot of black and brown people in a deprived school and their education, and then they're not getting outstanding, call it out. If you're in the healthcare system and you're noticing somebody on the ward next to you, a black parent who's been ill-treated or what have, call it out. You know, do not sit on your privilege. Do not pretend that this thing isn't happening. The time for pretending now has to end. You know, we cannot keep wearing this mask. We have to call it out, and it is for the white people, unfortunately, to see these things and now become allies and stand with us and call these things out, because it's not going to change otherwise. And I'm sorry, I'm really passionate about it, but we need to call it out.
Fantastic. Well said. Well, Sonali says changing workplace practices and organizational cultures is key. Jimmy Shabir says yes, true, call it out in capital letters. Abid Khan says well said, True Powell, and same for you, Justice. Ladies and gentlemen, True Powell and Justice Williams, thank you so much, guys, for coming in and joining the show. We will have to move on, and well done for your passionate delivery of your super intensive words there. I'm sure a lot of people will take them to heart, and hopefully we can move forward. And thank you for accepting, and thank you for coming. Thank you for joining us. Enjoy the rest of the whatever's left of this year, and we'll have a prosperous new year. Take care.
And you too.
You too. Bye-bye. Take care. Bye-bye. Right. Thanks very much, guys. Now, moving on, we have talking about, whilst we're talking about racism and we're talking about things that have been going on, we also noticed there was some blame shift about the coronavirus on Muslims. Did you notice that, Sarah?
Yeah, I think Muslims get blamed for anything, don't they? Really?
They certainly do. We have Sarah here. We have Dr. Shabina here. We also have Shireen Mahmood here. And a very good evening and welcome to you all. Just by way of a brief introduction, Shireen, you obviously do a lot of work within the media as well. You work on the radio, and you're also quite active on social media, as I understand. Is there anything else that you want to share with the audience about yourself?
Oh gosh, it's never easy.
You just had some pasta. Okay.
Yes.
We watched you eating
Noodles,
it as well.
actually.
Noodles, okay. At the same time, we also have Dr. Shabina Asad Qayyum. Dr. Shabina is, as the name suggests, she's a doctor. She's a general practitioner in Peterborough. And she's also one of the local councillors, very active, and I've seen her do some wonderful work for the local community. And we also have Sarah. Sarah is a coach. Sarah actually transitioned from one business to another, didn't you, Sarah, just recently?
I did during the first lockdown.
The first lockdown, yes. So
Yeah,
obviously
so-
that gives us an indication of what kind of things are going on out there and people having to make some transitions. So, and also let me add in Keith here. Keith, good evening.
Good evening to you, sir. How are you
So
doing?
Keith is who I would say is our answer to Barry White. Keith's voice when he does that
As
proximity
Matt
effect.
Hancock would say, it's great for you to have me on.
Well, thanks for joining us, everyone. We have a couple of more guests who are also going to join us, so keep tuned and stay tuned even. And we have Shaquille. Yes, Shaquille, how did you get in there?
You know what? I didn't know. I thought I was still in the waiting room there. How you doing, everybody?
I'm good, thank you. How is Anne? Oh, we've got Abid Khan just joined us as well. So it's a full house, isn't it? It's a full house tonight. So, guys, before we continue, just by way of quick introduction, we just missed out Shaquille and Keith and Abid. Keith is a fellow sales trainer, but he's a superstar in his own right. He's very eloquent in his delivery of what he delivers. He's got his own podcast as well, and his training on what I've seen on value proposition is quite unique. So if anybody wants to get to know more about that, get in touch with Keith. Sales training. I mean, Shaquille also does sales training, and he's a bit of a coach himself. Shaquille's what are you, Shaquille, now? I mean, you're jack of all trades and master of how many?
Probably zero, but no. I mean, I've spent 29 years in sales, training people, coaching people. I'm a speaker trainer, so I deal with anything to do with communication skills, negotiation skills, selling, social, getting a presence on social media, and leveraging social media for building your audience and growing your business.
Excellent.
By the way, do I need my hat? Because I feel I'm left out. Do I need my baseball cap?
You can put it on if you want. You need to have a proper beard to pull the look off properly. But you can put the hat on just to try and fit in if you like.
Abid's jumped in without.
Good evening, Abid. Excellent.
Keith, where's your hat?
So, guys, before obviously we're all here now, and one of the main topics that we wanted to discuss, in fact, the topic of tonight is all to do with 2020 and how we move forward in 2021, given what's been going on in 2020. So, if we just have a brief kind of an overview about 2020, I'm going to start off with Sarah. Sarah, how was your 2020 and what were the significant kind of takeaways from 2020 moving on to 2021 from your opinion?
Yeah.
Because you transitioned your business based on what had happened.
So I was a startup at the late 2018, working with my brother-in-laws within a travel agency. So we did a lot of corporate stuff. I was helping them developing more luxury brands for holiday travel. We did kind of niche down to a bit of halal and stuff like that, but obviously it was coming up to December, March, and I was starting to get really worried because I could see something coming. Then obviously March, it was like the taps just turned off on a really, really successful business, and it was really difficult. So at the time, I've got 10 years in telecoms and consultancy experience. So I kind of was like, what shall I do? I took some training from a coach, very famous coach, Lisa Johnson, and the big word in the business world is pivot. So I pivoted my business, and I've been offering out consultancy services from that time, and it's gone really well. It's really, really picked up. Again, travel started to pick up a little bit over the summer, and then look what happened again. We've just had more travel restrictions now, so it's been quite difficult on a lot of self-employed, especially startups.
Yeah, I mean, talking about self-employed, I mean, Keith, you noticed as well as some of us did with the furlough schemes and the grants that were available. Some of us were actually left out, weren't we?
About 3 million of us. Thanks, by the way. You're absolutely right. I do feel for Rishi Sunak. It's unprecedented, given a government of this colour of political colours, to wade in with something like 330 billion pounds of support for the business community, and no number will ever be enough, because it's such a catastrophic effect that it had on the global economy and on the UK economy. And anywhere where there's hospitality is the dominant sector is in big, big trouble. And we thought we were going to be in for lockdown 1. It was only going to be a few weeks. But here we are in lockdown 2, which we have no idea how long that's going to last. So we cannot rely on the government bailing us all out. We are going to have to pivot. And as you kindly mentioned earlier, Majid, how to differentiate yourself in that market amongst everyone else that's trying to do the same thing, adapt, pivot to the new way of working that we're finding ourselves in, is going to be absolutely key. So I would encourage everyone, and the phrase that I've kind of come up with last year, I probably stole it from someone else. Omar, I would have thought was in there. Rashid was in there somewhere, but actually, difference is better than better. So often, if you've got a competitor on your doorstep, and you can, lots of businesses will try and say, well, we're better than this because of whatever. It's actually better to be different.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a key point. I mean, on that point, we also have Dr. Shabina in the room, and Dr. Shabina has obviously been in the front line for most of this occasion, and she's a local counsellor, so she sees what's happening on the ground, and she obviously has patients to look after at the same time. So Shabina, tell us a bit more about how you feel 2020 has evolved, and some of the most common challenges which you feel maybe we could have handled differently.
So let's not hide the fact that it has been extremely challenging for people at all levels. If we look at all sectors, we've looked at the business, economic sector, the healthcare sector, we've had a look at the education sector. Every sector in its own way has suffered. People have had to face reams and reams of risk assessment to try and get back up and operational again. From the healthcare perspective, I've got two hats, obviously. I've got the healthcare hat that I wear, and also the counsellor hat, which is obviously public service. And both have had their challenges. Now, as counsellors as well, the way that we've worked has had to drastically change. We've sort of delved in, and I can speak for Peterborough because that's the constituency that I represent, and the ward that I represent is East Ward. We really had to delve in and try and communicate, find different ways of communicating with our residents. And as Keith had said, that it's about trying to find those new ways and trying to find those different ways in which we're able to communicate with people. And we've used Zoom, obviously, for meetings. We've also set up online counsellor surgeries by using Zoom as well. We've been able to get out literature a little bit more. I've used channels like WhatsApp where I can, obviously getting in touch with residents, and obviously getting ourselves involved with those community groups and charity groups. We've seen that poverty's been on the increase, trying to get out there and help those families that really have suffered, help the vulnerable, help those people that are shielding patients. And that's been very much akin and working with people within the healthcare sector. So I represent primary care. I'm a general practitioner. Accessibility has been a really big problem. People not being able to get to see their GPs face to face. And I work for a practice that has 11,000 patients, and it's been frustrating for people. I think part of looking towards the future is acknowledging some of the problems that we've had to face and how we're going to work around them. But of course, I'd just like to state that a lot of what we've been bound by is government legislation. A lot of us have been told that we're going to have to put a risk assessment in place, not just to protect ourselves, but to protect patients. And as we know,
tell me all about it. I've been doing those risk assessments. My job is to do those risk assessments, and I've been inundated since the coronavirus has come on to the scene since the very first lockdown even. So it's been very, very busy, Shabina, and I've noticed you're very much there on the ground with your constituents, helping businesses, helping individuals. Recently, there was some flooding happening, and you were right on the ground offering support, help for the people in the middle of the night, helping pregnant ladies. You're right in there. What do you make of the counter narrative that this whole thing about coronavirus is all made up? I mean, we have Shakil Chauhan here also who has his reservations in the state-led kind of narrative. What are your thoughts on that particular narrative?
So let's not hide away from the fact that, yes, it's been frustrating. Some of the government legislation and advice that has been put out has been confusing. But let's go put ourselves to the question. Let's answer your question. It is within my capacity as a professional, I follow guidance and statistics that have been given by the Office of National Statistics. And a coronavirus test that takes place and that is deemed as positive, whether it's a PCR test or a lateral flow test, is then reported as such and put on that database of Office of National Statistics. Now, currently, we have around 2.3 million people that have been diagnosed with coronavirus since the beginning of the pandemic in the United Kingdom. If you match that with the number of deaths, which is 71k deaths, and yes, there has been a lot of dispute and debate as to whether those deaths have truly been coronavirus deaths. Now, we've really got to have a look at how death certificates are issued. Death certificates are something that I do within my work as a general practitioner, and we go out and we see an individual. Now we know that tests are a lot more common. Testing is far more frequent and it's more accessible than what it was at the beginning of the pandemic. Obviously, let's not be complacent about that fact. And the fact of the matter is that we follow the official database. Now, if anybody can refute the idea that it is made up, then I would suggest that they give evidence in the way of official data statistics that state otherwise, and that should be evidence and reputable. So my sources are from the Office of National Statistics, not from public health websites and data. And if anybody can say otherwise with irrefutable evidence, then happy to take that on board. But obviously there are official channels in which this can be disputed, and if it's
Shabina, just a quick question on the statistics. I know there was some at the beginning when the statistics were put together, there was a lot of questions of whether they were actually being done correctly or not, because there were a lot of people ticked off as COVID patients who died from COVID when they may not have done. There was a question mark over that. Forget about the reason behind the death. What I'm interested to know, maybe you can answer this. From your experience as a doctor, have you noticed, I mean, if we were to imagine that this coronavirus or the COVID situation didn't exist and nobody ever spoke about it, the number of deaths occurring this year, has it been significantly higher than previous years?
It has been. Now, as of March this year, the number of excess deaths, according to the Office of National Statistics, and I've got an infographic that I'm happy to share with all of you, has been significantly higher than in previous years since 2015. So if I'm able to access the infographic, which is given by the Office of National Statistics, it's quite clearly written over here that that is compared to the average, 5-year average, 2015 to 2019, by whether or not COVID-19 was mentioned on the death certificate. The source has been the average has peaked to around 20,000 more excess deaths than previous years. And that
was actually Keith's question. What is the number of excess deaths in inverted commas versus a bad flu season?
And 20,000 is the number given by the Office of National Statistics that has been reported.
I hope that answers your question, Keith.
It does. Sorry, can I say something here? So
yeah, sure.
And every one of those, and thank you, that's really good to have meaningful and accurate data that we can trust. Every one of those excess deaths, in fact, I really dislike that term, excess deaths, but it serves a purpose for this argument. As bad as every one of those is, I wonder if the cure is worth all of that. What is the cost? We mentioned poverty and food banks earlier on, and it's a well-known fact, for every 1% drop in GDP, something like 5,000 people die. So we lost 10% last year, or in the last 12 months. So I wonder, is the cure is worth the ill? Is it proportionate?
Well, we've seen the phenomenal economic loss that has taken place, but just by virtue of businesses and as a result of deaths as well. We have seen people suffer. We have seen places like care homes suffer with a lack of staffing as a result of contracting infections such as COVID-19, which has placed an exponential pressure on staff. Likewise in primary care and likewise at the hospital. Hospitals have become incredibly short-staffed, and at this moment in time, as we speak, there are many hospitals throughout the country who are at breaking point and whose ITU beds are at full capacity. Now, that's one aspect of the economic pressure that we're seeing on as a result of COVID-19. But obviously, what's the cure? Now, we can get into a political debate about this, but the cure would have been and should have been ideally just at the beginning of the second wave. Now, if we'd followed the SAGE advice and we'd followed the advice that called for a 2-week circuit complete lockdown during half term, this would have, and when the new variants were being identified in COVID-19 and the coronavirus, this could have potentially saved those lives that we are now seeing lost as a result of the winter and obviously COVID-19 variants spreading like wildfire. And that was a suggestion that was made back in October. And that's me putting my political hat on, backed up by the SAGE advice.
What do the rest of you think about what Dr. Shabina is saying? Because this is a medical practitioner here.
Can I, Majid, let me read you the statistics from the ONS. This is accurate up to week 47. Yeah. 2013, 506,790 deaths. 2014, 501,000 deaths. 2015, 529,000 deaths. 2016, 525,000 deaths. 2017, 533,000. 2018, 541,000. 2019, last year, 530,000. Up to week 47, 511,000. So by week 47, we were already 20,000 below the previous year. This is where there's people are being confused with this issue of ON, the excess debt. I'm interested in what's the bottom line. What are the total figures? I've just given you total figures from the ONS. By the end of the year, we will be on target for about the same number of total deaths as 2019. Where is this pandemic? Because if a pandemic is in place, there will be deaths, excess deaths, more deaths in the previous years. We had more people die in 2018 of flu than have died this year of this alleged pandemic, which I call a plandemic. Okay, so I'm really, really confused because we are told that there are bodies dropping left, right, and center. If there was a pandemic, as they allege, we wouldn't have a debate about it. We would know. The only reason we think there's a pandemic is because the media tell us, and the government are pumping out all sorts of nonsense. The media are backing absolutely everything up. And we're supposed to have a political party in opposition. There is no opposition. They're all in lockstep. What are they doing? They're implementing the Rockefeller Lockstep project. There's a project called Lockstep. You can look it up. Anybody can go and look that up. And what that means is all world leaders, all political parties will be in lockstep, and there will be no dispute, there will be no argument, there will be no toing and froing from that line.
What is this Rockefeller thing, what you're talking about?
Well, the Rockefeller Institute, I mean, just like you've got the WEF, these are private organizations. World Economic Forum, Klaus Schwab, it's a private organization. He has become some self-appointed financial global guru, just like Dr. Bill Gates. I'm going to have to call him Dr. Bill Gates because he is running the medical community like this. He's got them all by their little finger and he's stirring the pot, and they all bow down to this great wizard of Oz.
Okay,
Dr.
Shaquille,
Bill
before
Gates.
okay, let me just ask you a question, Shaquille. Just a quick question.
Yeah.
Forget about coronavirus. Forget about everything else. Just for
Okay.
1 second, from what you've personally observed, right?
Yeah.
Are you genuinely and sincerely telling me that when you open your Facebook, because I know you're on Facebook quite regularly, when
Yeah.
you open your Facebook and you look at your news feed, you do not see a horrific amount of, or an increase, a number of deaths being
I've just
announced?
quoted you the figures.
No, forget that. Forget the figures and stuff. Are you telling me you personally haven't noticed the number of deaths being announced of having increased?
You know what? People are talking more about the deaths when they happen. And this is
Well,
what's
death-
happening. What's
when
happened?
de-
Let me ask you a question. Where has flu gone? Flu. How many?
Shaquille, you haven't answered my question. Are you telling me you haven't noticed an increase of the number of deaths
No, it's just a normal amount.
being announced? You're saying it's a normal amount.
The overall figure is about the same as previous years. And I've just given you ONF government figures. Yeah. We are on track. In another 2-3 days, we will have had about the same number of deaths as last year. Did we have a pandemic last year?
I tell you one thing, Shaquille. I mean, as most of you will know, I do risk assessment. I work closely with mosques and some of them run funeral services. From my personal experience of talking to funeral services, and Abid's just on the line as well now. He's been involved in some of these insurances as well for them. I can tell you from my own personal feedback that I've been given from the people who are burying the deceased, they are inundated with the burials this year in comparison to any other previous year. Abid, what's your take on it?
Kenny, just before you say that, can I just say there was a massive flurry of deaths at nursing homes because people were taken out of, elderly patients were taken out of hospitals. People were being ventilated when they shouldn't have been ventilated because the illness that is happening is very akin to mountain sickness, where you altitude sickness.
Can I just say?
So one second. Let's just Shabina, just if you want to come back on that, yeah.
So I'm married to an ear, nose, throat consultant who has regular AGP procedures. We know the science behind the way that COVID-19 is affecting all patients. My mother, my father, my nephew, my brother, his wife are all afflicted with COVID-19 at the same time, and they have their annual flu jab every year. But this year they've had their annual flu jab and they've come down with COVID-19. I would like to ask, where does the evidence-based medicine and literature state that COVID-19 is an illness akin with mountain sickness? And where is the evidence to substantiate that fact, and what pathological studies have taken place to substantiate that fact when currently in the world we have around 76 million people who've been afflicted with COVID-19? The second thing I'd like to say, are you saying that 300,000 doctors that practice with a license to practice under the General Medical Council, inclusive of, and in addition to that, 150,000 nurses and midwives are all making this up?
I'm not saying anybody's making anything up. Let me ask you a question in response to that. The PCR test you're going by, see, what we're told is you have been tested positive. By the way, what's his name? Mr. Valence. What's the guy's name? Sir something, Patrick Valence. Yeah. In May, he was speaking on camera, and he openly said it, and it's been repeated, and the videos were put out again yesterday. He said not all the people who are down with COVID certificates have died of COVID, first of all. And this is the head. Is he the head scientist of the Govt? Is he the health secretary?
Sorry, 1 second. Let's get Abid in for a second. He's been waiting to. Right. Okay. 1 second. Shaquille. 1 second. 1 second, Shaquille.
Now, if you take away the media, if you take away social media, if you take away the news, if you take away everything and all the information that's coming out, if you just look within your own contact base and your own connections, how many people since March have we lost? And then how many people have been infected and have been incredibly ill? Now, what Shaquille was saying about the stats, I totally appreciate that. But there's a specific reason that people die with COVID, and that's due to the lungs and the shortness of breath. Flu doesn't do that. COVID does that. I've been engaging with people on FaceTime, on WhatsApp videos, and looking at their state, you know, in day 9, in day 10, right? And it's actually horrific. So, you know, people are dying with this condition. COVID is real. The hospitals are inundated. And if you take away all the bullshit from social media, excuse my French, but if you just look in your own contact bases and your own connections, you're either very sheltered or you're in denial. And what I would say is that if you have a position of influence on social media, you have a responsibility not to spread fictitious gibberish, which encourages people to go out and spread the virus more. Now, on Boxing Day, 8,000 ambulances were called in London. 8,000. That is incredible. Boris is in a meeting right now, and we're potentially looking at another national lockdown. Now, if people stop going out and stop listening to rubbish, then we wouldn't be in this situation.
So let me explain. We've had lockdowns after lockdowns. The lockdowns are clearly not working. If lockdowns worked, we wouldn't need a second and a third and a fourth.
No. Shaquille.
We were all locked down. You know when the first...
If people were not out protesting,
Okay, let me explain something. What we are misled by, right, is that, first of all, everybody did, by the way, massively observe the first lockdown. We were told for 2 weeks, we were locked down for months. It went on for months. Okay, now, we are locking people down for a disease that has a 99.97% 99.97% survivability rate.
Can you categorically deny that people are dying from COVID or not?
I don't know what they're dying from, but I'm telling you what they're being told.
You don't know what they're dying from, but it's not COVID.
Okay. But no.
Is that what you're saying?
Well, okay, let me ask you this. What happened to the flu figures?
Shaquille, what is your social following? What is your Facebook following?
How do you mean, what is it?
Thousands of people follow you on social media.
Overall, between all my channels, probably 10,000.
10,000, which is probably more than mine. Out of them 10,000 people, you cannot hand on heart say that some of these people have died due to COVID, or are suffering due to COVID, or have suffered COVID, or are going through COVID, or have had life-changing experiences due to COVID. Can you honestly say that to me?
People are getting sick. There is something making people sick. I don't deny that.
Shaquille.
Let's call it COVID. Let's call it COVID. Yes, people. I agree with you.
The community that I live in and the people
that I know,
people that I associate with, right? It's apparent. No one's feeding me this, this information. It's what I'm seeing with my own eyes. People near and dear to me have died, right? People that we mutually know have died. People that we mutually know have suffered and have been ill and are still suffering the consequences of COVID.
I'll tell you what, listen, today there was a debate and a discussion on Talk Radio, okay? There are major doctors who have confirmed that the effects of the lockdown has killed and will have killed 500,000 people. The impact is on 500,000. The COVID disease hasn't killed anywhere near that sort of figure.
We have somebody in the room just now. Amar Khan Awan has just joined us. Welcome. Good evening, Amar.
Good evening.
Hope you're well.
Good evening, Majid. Thank you. Thanks for letting me in. I'm listening to this debate, and it's actually infuriating me when I'm listening to some of these people saying that COVID doesn't exist. My own father died of COVID, and Shaquille, if you just stepped
No, I didn't say COVID doesn't exist. Let me do it. I didn't say that it doesn't exist. What I'm saying is we are being lied to about the nature of what is killing people.
So whose advice should we follow then? Should we just listen to ourselves and just think, we should do what we think is right and not listen to government guidance? There's got to be some sort of authority that
I don't know if you were you there from the beginning. Have you seen?
No, I understand.
Is there an explosion in deaths? Because at the moment we're on track. We're on track for the same number of deaths as last year.
Forget the statistics. There's something known as common sense.
Just to make
let Amar just have it safe for a moment, guys.
Just to make you realize, if you just step into the hospital and see your loved one on the bed dying of COVID, and then look around the hospital and see all the other patients on ventilators passing away, that's when it makes you realize how deadly this thing actually is. And then preaching to people saying that this doesn't exist and it's not deadly and we should walk behind masks. I'm sorry, that's just idle. Why would you want to say that to people? We ask people to protect themselves, not to go out.
Okay, have you heard?
Unfortunately, our community has not helped themselves. You go into any Asian area in any city within the UK, and they're walking around because they don't think it exists. They just deny the fact that this.
No. In fact, I'll disagree with you. I think the Asian community is probably the most compliant community in the UK.
So then, why is it that the Asian community, a lot of people in the BAME community, are actually dying?
Actually,
have you taken
Shaquille, how can you say that the Asian community is the most compliant?
No, actually not. That's absolutely rubbish. I'm sorry, I don't agree with that.
That's my experience. My experience is that the Asian community is very, very compliant.
Okay, Dr. Shabina, I'm just gonna bring Dr. Shabina in a second to give her.
I'm going to give some evidence on this. So first of all, Brother Shaquille had stated that the true figures of COVID-19, the deaths due to COVID-19, is that we're being lied to with regards to death. So I would like everybody here in the room to tell me what the structure of a death certificate looks like, so I can further explain what my premise is behind giving you this explanation. Now, on a death certificate, you have a main cause of death at 1A. Then you've got 1B, which is a contributory factor to the cause of death. Then you've got number 2, which are any underlying conditions that could have led up to this person becoming unwell as a result of them dying from a said condition. So let's take your typical 65-year-old Asian male who's obese, has got heart problems, who's got diabetes, and is struck down with COVID-19. He goes through the rigmarole of all these symptoms. He then becomes quite short of breath, so that he can't be managed at home, falls quite unwell, calls an ambulance, is taken into hospital. Okay. Now, and the other thing that Brother Shaquille has said is that they're put on ventilators when they don't need to be put on ventilators. Now, these people on ITU are monitored with their heart rate, their blood pressure, their oxygen saturation levels. And I can tell you right now that anybody that has an oxygen saturation level of under 80 needs to be looked into, because that means that their lungs are not working properly. And
Can I just stop?
Just let her finish. Let her finish.
I'm giving you evidence, okay, as to how we approach this. As clinicians and as somebody who's also worked in accident and emergency and has had to look at people and make the very difficult decision, and I say in inverted commas, very difficult decision of having to put somebody's loved one on a ventilator. It is not easy, okay? So this comes across as very accusatory to those 300,000 doctors, nurses and midwives that are registered in this country with a license to practice, number one. Number two, the other thing I would like to say to you is that when an individual cannot breathe by themselves, most intensive care units will then look to put that person on a CPAP machine. They don't straight away sedate them. And if they're not responding on a CPAP machine in which the individual is awake and alert, the signs that are looked for is when somebody is drowsy and cannot use their own lungs and chest to breathe adequately. The decision is then made after ample discussion with other team members on a ward round that this individual may need to go onto a ventilator in order to save their life. Not to forget that we all undertake a Hippocratic oath to safeguard life when we qualify. Now, it's very upsetting for some people who have lost loved ones. And it's very difficult to break the news to somebody that their loved one has died, especially when people are in place that loved ones cannot see their relatives and be with their relatives in the final moments of their death. That's the first thing I'd like to say. Now, those people that have comorbidities, especially within our BAME minority communities, where it has been stipulated, according to the Doring-Lawrence report, that was titled An Unavoidable Crisis, in which he specifically stipulated that the BAME ethnic minorities were more at risk of dying due to COVID-19 because of inequalities, disproportionate inequalities in education, in health, in housing, in terms of being a recipient in terms of economic losses as well. So there are many factors that contribute towards the BAME community being more at risk from COVID-19 than other people. And unfortunately, our genetic makeup is such that we are more at risk of developing heart disease, diabetes, which makes our prognosis more poorer than our Caucasian counterparts. And that is why we have seen the death rate in BAME communities higher. Now, when somebody goes in to hospital, say for an end-stage cancer, their death is accelerated if they catch COVID-19, because if they do catch COVID-19, go into hospital, but the cause of their death would be COVID-19 contributed by the fact that they had an underlying cancer. So a death certificate is a very technical and legal piece of paperwork that has to go through to the coroner, and every death certificate is seen by a coroner. Now, if there are any doubts, there is a process in place. I say to everybody that any family, rather than go to somebody to display on social media, there are legal processes in place whereby you can challenge the authorities as to why they wrote a certain diagnosis, and all of that information is evidence, documented on a case-by-case basis. And the coroner is the individual to then carry out that investigation, and they are completely separate from the hospital. They have a legal standing. So I hope that has given some.
Thank you very much. I'm just going to jump in just for 1 second, guys. We've actually come towards the end of the show, but what I'm going to do is, because a lot of people have been waiting very, very patiently, and this has been into a COVID show, although I guess the main theme of 2020 has been the coronavirus, and that's been the most significant thing that's been affecting everyone's life, not just locally, nationally, but globally. But what I want to do is just go across the room now by one, just for everybody to just give me 60 seconds follow up on what you found was the significant of your findings of 2020, and how you feel, or what you feel people should do to overcome some of those challenges going into 2021. Since we're with Dr. Shabina to begin with, Doc, if you want to just round that up and then we'll move on.
I'm going to say something non-medical, non-political. For goodness sake, all be a bit kinder to each other. People have experienced such negativity. This country is in need of so much more healing, and just to be kind to each other and to come together with each other for comfort. And this is how we need to enter into 2021, to work with each other with greater hope, greater compassion towards the greater good, for the betterment of our children, so that we set examples for them.
Excellent. Thank you very much. We'll move on to Shireen, who's been here from the beginning and barely had a word in edgeways. Shireen, give us your roundup of 2020, and give us, you can have slightly more than 60 seconds if you wish. Just give us what you've got. Give us your best.
You know what? It's been, wow. It's been quite explosive, hasn't it? You've done this on purpose, I feel. But it's been a good. I do feel, you know what? It's been a tough year, and clearly people have lost a lot of loved ones. Yeah. This COVID issue is always there's always going to be two sides. You know, on the one hand, we of course sympathise with people who have lost loved ones. It's interesting. I'm not going to say my either or about this. I'm not going to be the first one in line for the vaccine. I'll be honest with you.
We haven't even touched on the vaccine subject, and
I know.
I
thought I'd get it in there for you.
Yeah, thanks. Right at the end there. Yeah.
I'm not the first in line. Let's let everybody have it and see how they go with it before I jump in. But you know, I think exactly what Dr. Shabina said about being kind. It's so important to be kind and try and be helpful. You know, going forward, we've had a lot of tough times, and we've had some extra time at home with loved ones, kids. You know, the focus should be on, you know, the priorities perhaps that we'd forgotten before lockdown. So, you know, let live, keep positive. If you're going to fight, pick a worthy goal. A worthy cause if you are going to fight about something, you know, and be the best that we can all be. And let's get together. This is about getting together. Love what you guys do, and I think it is really important to stay motivated and work together for a common, you know, we all want the same things. We want the best for our kids. Let's try and be the best that we can be, really.
Shireen, you're starting a podcast or a platform of your own. What's it going to be called?
Yes, so MuslimsConnectRadio.com is something that's coming very soon in the next year. I think
so that's
it's about
time. A global international platform where you've got people contributing from around the world, right?
Exactly. We're hoping to have live khutbah from Masjid Al-Aqsa, which you guys know I travel to a lot, but COVID-19 has blown that out of the water. But inshallah, that will be back. But guys, another thing before I let you guys go, I suppose I'd say everything's a phase. We're going through phases. We're going through a tough phase. It won't last. Inshallah, if we all stick together, we'll get over the worst of this as well.
Inshallah. Thanks for coming, Shireen, and thank you for waiting ever so patiently. I was wondering if you were going to be putting some words in edgeways.
I was rolling up my sleeve.
You should have done. But thanks very much once again, and look forward to seeing you in the new year as well, inshallah.
Definitely. Take care.
Sarah.
Hello. I just want to echo the sentiments of everybody else, to be honest with you. Obviously, I came on because I wanted to kind of highlight the issues that small business, self-employed have had. You know, there's 1.6 million people that are self-employed that were excluded from help from the government. And again, a lot of people need help at the moment. But today is a new day for everybody. Just like me, I pivoted. I got on my feet. Maybe I'm talking from a place of privilege as well because I've had previous skills, but all different industries have been affected. We've had travel, the wedding industry, service-based businesses, anything that's face-to-face, beauticians. So many people have been affected, and we're going to really need to pull together and help each other moving forward. Rishi Sunak, somebody just highlighted, speaking about Rishi Sunak having a difficult job. The government have got a difficult job at the moment, but comments like people have got to start using their savings aren't really helping us at the moment. So I think we need to get back to a grassroots level. I mean, I've got experience before COVID working on a grassroots level with the homeless, and like you guys, we know exactly what goes on. We know the gaps in the systems, and it is up to us to kind of fill them. And
absolutely, and I would also go far to say that those people who are going through some kind of a challenge or transition in their business life, have a chat with Sarah. She could probably help. She's actually transitioned her business from a previous business into a new business during the pandemic, and is making a success of it. So she's definitely worth having 5 minutes with if you need the chat. I'm sure Sarah will welcome having that chat. Yeah, definitely. Thank you very much for that. Right, if we can have Amr next. Thank you, Amr, for coming in.
Hi, Majid. Apologize, I missed most of the debates, and when I saw
no problem. Listen, I kind of felt that this was going to be something that it would personally be something personal for yourself. Obviously, Income 01 was more like a father figure for a lot of us. No,
I applaud you for raising these issues and bringing this program on. It's been really interesting, and
thank you.
It's been a tough year for many people. It's been a tough year for us as a family, and it's not just you're losing your loved ones, but a lot of people lost businesses through this. And I think the only thing is that things that we can learn is to appreciate your loved ones, spend more time with them. With businesses, it's made us more resilient. This is not the first lockdown or the second lockdown. We're going to see more of these lockdowns, and it's preparing ourselves, preparing our businesses for the next coming months. And next year is going to be as tough, if not tougher. I reckon the economy is going to have a hit as well. It's tough in many ways, really. So appreciate loved ones, and put all the energy in your businesses. The people who do run businesses, and hopefully we can pull through this. I'm sure we will, inshallah.
Inshallah. Thanks for coming on, Amr. It's lovely to see you again, albeit digital nowadays. Salams to the rest of the family as well. Take care. Shakil.
Yeah.
Thanks for waiting patiently, Shakil.
No problem. Thank you very much. You know what? It's been a very, very unusual year. It's enabled me to launch an international business networking group, which is fantastic.
Excellent.
As a professional speaker, I never really was expecting to see myself get involved in sort of the freedom movement and the anti-lockdown and the anti-vaccine, pro-safe vaccine movement, by the way. I'm not anti-vaccine, I'm pro-safe vaccine. So when we ever have a safe vaccine come out, that'll be fantastic. I think we should perhaps talk about the vaccine as well. But what I would say to people is, do not take the state narrative. Let me tell you in all, I was an officer in the British Army in the run-up to the first Gulf War. I was part of the preparation, and I had advanced knowledge 2 years before the war took place of the millions of people that we were going to kill as a government in Iraq. So I was actually part of the preparations. So I know as a government what deaths we plan, how we plan to lie to the nation, how we plan to lie to the world. Yeah, because millions died as a result of the Iraq invasion. My contract ended and I left the military just before the invasion started. And not just myself, many other officers in the army, many soldiers were not happy. We knew we're going to go on a turkey shoot with the whole of NATO, and the Iraqi military and the Iraqi civilians do not stand a chance. So when I tell you governments lie, we've done it many times before. And we are being lied about the nature of what is happening. The flu has disappeared. 377 deaths of flu. Flu typically kills 20 to 50,000 a year. What's happened is this COVID-19 has been rebranded as flu. Yeah, but there is a difference with the COVID. It's causing a respiratory issue, but the problem is that what it's causing, it's not causing a productive chest. It's very dry. And when I said earlier, it's creating something very similar to altitude sickness. And what it's causing the lungs to fibrose. The issue is not that the lungs need ventilating, because 80% of the people who went on ventilators died. What was happening was the oxygen is unable to bind. The oxygen is being knocked out of the hemoglobin, and the oxygen is not binding properly. And that's why people are having this shortness of breath. Doctors, people like Dr. Rashid Buttar, Dr. Andy Kaufman in the USA, they've openly talked about this. Dr. Judy Mikovits openly speaks.
Okay, Shakil, we wanted to restrict this to 60 seconds, but round up, please. Yeah.
But just very quickly, 70,000 doctors, scientists, and researchers have signed the Great Barrington Declaration. And what they are calling for is a focused attention on the elderly. Isolate and treat the elderly. We don't need to lock down the whole nation. The average age of people dying in the UK is 82 from COVID. The average life expectancy in the UK.
So Shakil, what's your overall thoughts of how to move forward in 2021?
Don't believe bullshit. Don't believe the lies. Don't live in fear. People are right now gripped in fear. People are afraid to speak to each other. There's no human connection gone. As humans, we thrive for loving and connecting and seeing and smiling and hugging. All of that's gone. I go shopping and there are people that I don't recognize because they're wearing masks. The masks don't work. And
you're against the masking, wearing the masks as well?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. The World Health Organization openly states they do not work.
I think, you obviously have plenty to share. What I would suggest is obviously the stuff that you would like to share, to put it in the comment section after this, so people who want to read up on what you want to share.
Information.
Yeah.
There's so much information. We haven't had the opportunity to go into here.
No problem. And on a final note, Abid Khan, your final words, please. How have you found 2020, and what do you propose people do for 2021?
I've got a migraine. Anyway, as Shakil said, don't believe the bullshit. However, practice common sense. We all have a brain, and do a calculation in your head. As a nation, I feel that every rule or every legislation that the government comes out with, we try and find ways around it. This pandemic is real. Forget the medics, forget the statistics. Just look around you, look at your community, look at the way people are suffering. People have lost loved ones, people have lost businesses, people are losing homes, and they're going to lose them more in the new year. So, just use some common sense. And as far as business is concerned, I've interviewed many business people throughout this whole lockdown. Be ready to change, be part of the change. We are going to go through some really strange times ahead, and just be prepared.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Abid. And on a final note from me, guys, this was the final episode of 2020. I hope you've enjoyed what we've been discussing up till now. We've obviously ended with a bang, and we do look forward to having you joining us in 2021. We have lots in the bag which we want to share. In the meantime, I would like to thank everybody who's participated, everyone who's contributed. Don't forget to like the page. Don't forget to follow us on YouTube and Instagram. We're everywhere. Just make sure you follow to see the updates. I would also like to say a special thanks to all the people who've been working hard in the background, the frontline workers, the teachers, as somebody kindly mentioned, Makki Masjid mentioned on the comments, who have gone out of the way to try and accommodate that the education of children is still sustainable and as low risk as can be, especially the people who are looking after the patients and those people who need help. people in this particular center where we're broadcasting from. This is the Radio Ikhlas Center in Derby. Downstairs, as we speak, we've got all the rooms full of food as a food bank, and this is being distributed. So many thanks to everybody who's doing work for those people who are struggling, seeing tough times. Our own group, Humanity Unites, which we run on every Tuesday and Sunday, and also deliver food parcels with. So on behalf of myself and Ali Khan, who's decided to take an early year off, have a very good evening, and thank you for joining us, and inshallah we'll see you again in the new year. Take care, stay safe.